Okay, today we're going to talk about the normal distribution curve. Okay, before we were talking about how to get to this standard deviation. So you should be able to find a standard deviation, but I just want to point out the where that's at. Get some Easter colors here. See these little marks down here? This theta is standard deviation. So what this says is one standard deviation. This is subtract one standard deviation. Okay. So you'll see the key to this is all the mean. Before, when we were looking at our other displays, it was all about the median. So now the middle of our data is the mean. Remember, it's a measure of central tendency, but in this case, it's the exact middle is the mean. Okay. What this normal curve is one standard deviation either way of the curve is about 34% of the data. Okay. So that means that one standard deviation either way is a whopping 68% of our data. So most of the data falls within one standard deviation of the mean. Then we go out and we say, well, what about plus 2? So that section's only 13.5%. But really, if we talk about two standard deviations, we're talking about this. So this whole area that's two standard deviations more than the mean is actually this plus this. So we get like 47, 48%, right? So about half the data is about two standard deviations more than the mean. And if we go both ways, you see that 95% of the data falls within two standard deviations either way from the mean. Then what we see is if we take a third standard deviation each way, you get 99.7% of your data. So at that point, we say almost all of it, right? But that's why these lines are never going to touch here because you never get all of it. But remember, 100% of your data needs to fall beneath this curve, okay? So this is what I need you to be able to do is answer questions about our normal curve. So here's a blank one without all the notes. What's going to happen is your data is going to fall somewhere on this curve. Remember, this is the mean. So then when you take a standard deviation, you're saying some number plus the mean, some number minus, or the mean minus some number, the mean minus two of those numbers, right? So if I'm like a data point that's right here, then I would say that I'm within two standard deviations of the mean, okay, which is pretty normal. Now, if I'm way out here, we say that I'm outside of three standard deviations of the mean. And remember, three standard deviations is like almost all of it, right? So we would say this is crazy. And remember, this is what we would call our outlier. These are crazy data points that really don't fit, okay? So if I want to say, what's the range of 68% of our data? Then you would say, okay, I want to go from one standard deviation to the other, which these are going to be numbers. It's going to be your mean, which you know, plus one standard deviation. So the mean plus one standard deviation, the mean plus two standard deviations, the mean plus three, okay? And every data point will fit somewhere on your normal curve, all right? So you need to be able to create a normal curve. You need to be able to answer questions about the normal curve, like where does it fall? Is it within one standard deviation of the mean, like this one? Is it within three standard deviations like these two? And so on. Okay, email if you have any questions.